while other people are dialing in, I do want to do some introductions to you, for you rather. And in the other room, working the Wizard of Oz behind the scenes kind of thing, is Mandy Stafford, our funeral director and general manager. Mandy is just returning actually back from maternity leave. And so she had her baby a month early. Had she had her baby right at the time, they probably would have induced anyway because of all the concerns about the COVID virus. So she had her baby early. She comes back to work in the middle of all of this pandemic thing, but we're glad to have her back at work. And I want to share with you what she's been doing during this time. So let me see if I can get this. There we go. There are her two boys. Jack is the older of the two, and Marty is the little bean that is sleeping there. And Sean and Mandy certainly do a great job with having great looking boys. This little Jack, the older of the two boys, is the most photogenic kid you are ever going to see. He's never taken a bad picture. I'm sure Mandy at home, he's probably acted up and not been that perfect child that he looks like in the pictures, but he looks pretty good. He really does. So I'm glad to have Mandy here helping us out. And some of you know her too, because she has helped you and your family. And then my co-panelist on tonight is Taelor Johnson. And Taelor, I've been working with her for a bunch of years. I've been living with her for even longer than that because she is my stepdaughter. And I am very proud of that fact. I worked for my dad for many, many years, and that was really a plus. Family business is really a significant, important thing in the economy. I think we're realizing how important that is, but it's also been important in my life. And it's great to be working with a family member again. And Taelor, many of you already know Taelor, even if you don't know her personally, because if you've read any of our newsletters or any of the Grief Compass content, she is the author and editor of all of that information. So Taelor, we give you applause on
Thanks.
that. Welcome tonight. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I mean, I think we're all a little bit extra stressed because of the way things are right now, but it's all right. I'm coming to you live from my living room. I don't always have like curtain thing behind me, but
I have a feeling covering a big mess behind there, but that's
no,
okay.
It's not actually. The living room is quite clean, but there's a couple of dogs and things that may be roaming around. So
I'm kind of hoping that the dogs, which are my grand dogs, I hope that the dogs are going to come up and want a little love before the end of the night, because who doesn't love a dog, especially now? Having a dog around is kind of a plus. And at the other end of her dining room table is usually her husband, who's been working from home too. So there's been a lot of forced fidelity in that household. But you're doing fine. And I haven't seen you in 4 weeks. I think we've only seen each other personally twice.
Yeah. We're following the rules.
It is, these are very, very strange times. And to say that doesn't even kind of give it the weight that it really deserves. But when we were talking about this last week, we were thinking, to go through grief, it's already a tremendous burden. And it's a burden that most people around us don't understand, don't share, don't have an affinity with us because they're not experiencing that. Mm-hmm. Now you compound it by putting this stay at home, this isolation order that all of us are sharing. All of us have affinity. All of us are having the trouble understanding it. And it just compounds our grief reaction even more. So our goal here tonight is to help you feel more comfortable with all of these forced changes that have taken place in the last 4 weeks. And the amount of change that any one of us has seen is more than any of us have seen in 4 years, in a lifetime probably. I've been around for a lot longer than Taelor, and I've never seen anything like this. And let's hope we never go through it again.
Mhm.
So let's do it once and get it done. But we found when we were talking about this that there is a lot of parallels between the grief that's associated with the death and the grief that's associated with the isolation, because it's a loss. It's a significant loss. This isolation is a loss of community. It's a loss of socialization. It's a loss of just the ability to be able to walk out and have a conversation with somebody or a hug with somebody. Now, my wife and I will go out for a walk and we'll say hi to somebody that's coming up alongside of us, and they will walk way around us into the, it's hard not to take that personally, because these are the strange times that we're in. So our goal tonight is to take about 40 minutes and really give you some good content that will help you be able to deal with the changes that we're handling, and to be able to give you some common ground and some ways to be able to cope better with the grief that's associated with not only the death, but the grief of the times that we're going through right now too. And so, Taelor, let's first of all talk about the elephant that's in everybody's room, which is this whole isolation thing. So
Yeah, it's a unique time to, with writing and speaking to families for almost 10 years now about grief. One of the things that we always talk about is the profound loss of normalcy that we all experience when someone we love dies. My dad passed away when I was 12, and in that time period, I lost my dad and my two grandparents in about 18 months. So I got really associated with the experience of grief and death and loss at that time. And it's sort of been integrated in my life ever since, because then you came into our lives, and I've been around it, and then I started working there, and
but it never leaves you. It never leaves you.
No.
There's always a legacy that relationship has, and the end of that relationship that never leaves you. And how we recover from that, how we move on from that, and how we take meaning from that is really the positive impact that we can bring into what we do next.
Absolutely. And it's doesn't matter when it happens in your life or who it happens to. It's all comes down to this lack of normalcy. This person who was in your life, who you loved so much, and they're not being present anymore, and you not being able to pick up the phone and call them, and not being able to share experiences with this person you love who died. And that is, I mean, there's such an incredible amount of finality that does create a difference between what we're experiencing now collectively and what individuals who have lost a loved one are experiencing. Because what's probably going to happen is we're going to get back to some version of normal once this isolation ends and once we fully flatten the curve and all that. But people who have lost a loved one don't have that. We get to return to this. So really for people who are going through this right now, it's about finding a way to make an abnormal situation already somewhat more manageable. So we can figure out how to find support from our communities and from ourselves, where we normally would be getting it from someone else. I mean, you were mentioning it before, but like, we can't get hugs, and we so often we talk about,
I love a good hug.
Yeah, we talk about the power of meaningful touch and being able to be with people that you love and feel that love when they hug you, and we can't do that right now. So what we're kind of the impetus for doing this, or the reason why we were doing it, was because we want to help people get a handle on some skills that they can incorporate into their lives to get them through until they can get a hug, till they can get back to their regular social groups, till they can get back to their family and get the support that they want and that they need.
I think over the years of doing what I'm doing, and talking to people after they've experienced the loss, including myself when my brother died in 1991 and when my dad died in 2007. It was the whole idea of, when am I going to get back to normal?
Yeah.
And at some point, there is a realization in your head that normal will come, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we all are. Like 2 weeks ago, I think I kind of thought that this might last, this isolation thing might last 2 months. Now I don't think so. I think it's going to bring us to what this new normal might be.
Mm-hmm.
So the parallels between grief and this isolation are really amazing. But it still does not make it any easier. In fact, it makes it more difficult for a lot of us to be able to express that, because we can't readily go to somebody and be able to have that experience.
The nice thing, though, and not the nice thing, but one of the opportunities that come from this, though, is that you can maybe try some things that you wouldn't have in the past because it's under the umbrella of quarantine rules apply. So maybe something that you wouldn't feel comfortable doing in a normal grief situation, you can try it now because it's everything is outside of normalcy right now. So maybe, we'll talk about some options of things you can do later, but it's maybe you can do them under this umbrella that gives you permission.
I think that's a good way to look at it, because we're all kind of making up the rules on some of these things as we go along. And when we're going through this grief, a lot of times we don't think that we've got permission to experience it or to express it around other people, because people want us, oh, don't make me feel uncomfortable. I don't want to say anything that's going to make you cry. I don't want to do anything like that. And so let me just tell the people that are on the call with us, if you have any comments that you want to share with everybody, there is a chat box, and you can kind of explore on your screen where it is. And there's also a spot for questions and answers. And so we'll do our best to handle as much of that as we can. But so Taelor, let's get into this whole feeling of being in a cocoon and being kind of hyper isolated.
Yeah, it's when you're experiencing grief in general, there can be a impulse to isolate yourself, to, like you said, like interacting can be hard. Yeah, to withdraw. Like, you don't want to have to talk about it. You don't want to have to figure out how to interact with people who don't know how to interact with you. There's all kinds of challenges like that. And so sometimes you kind of withdraw into yourself. What can happen now, and in this environment, is we're all being encouraged to withdraw. So we can be taking this invitation or direction to withdraw and really lean into it to a point where we're hyper isolating ourselves. We're not connecting to people on the phone or on Zoom or any of the normal ways or normal ways that we're communicating right now in isolation. We can just say, oh, well, I don't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to talk to that person right now. That takes too much energy, which is okay. It's okay to know your limits, but also there's no need for you to go out and interact with people. So a lot of what's going to happen is taking that on to yourself and being able to reach out and accept people when they are reaching out to you.
But one of the things I've really noticed in myself and in my wife and in my grandkids and my relationship with you and the staff and my friends is we're not meant for this. This isolation is against human nature. We crave that kind of contact and the ability to see others. And so I think that when we get into this little hyper isolated feeling and the feeling of the lack of control that comes from the feeling of grief and isolation, that we tend to develop or can develop a pretty short fuse from time to time.
Yeah, you kind of, the more time you spend alone, the more you forget the value of social graces.
Well, all right. You blaming me for something?
No.
All right.
But it is. I mean, we call them social graces because grace is about offering something to someone that they haven't earned, and so there's a politeness that can kind of get lost when you go out again and things, you're so used to having everything your way at your home that all of a sudden you can't have everything your way and you have to consider other people who are around you. And it can also go the other direction. If you're at home with someone else, whether it's a child or a spouse or a parent or something like that, just little things about them that maybe you were like, that's not my favorite characteristic of them, but you let it go. Now it's there all the time and it can really wear on your nerves. So
You've been talking to your mother, my wife.
I've been sitting across from my husband 24
Well,
hours a
that
day.
it does.
Yeah.
Again, this is not something that we're used to, and it's new.
Mm-mm.
And anytime that choices have been taken away from us, um, it just kind of makes us rebel a little bit. A death is a choice that's been taken away from us,
Mm-hmm.
and so all of these emotions really interact. And I just think that now's the right time to kind of, more than ever, to kind of guard your thoughts too, and to kind of to give a little extra time thinking about how you express it, but also to choose what kind of thoughts we're gonna. I mean, are we gonna pump negative things in there? There's a lot of news. I can tell you that myself, I have just decided I'm not watching the news past 6:30 at night. I just value my sleep. I don't watch the Sunday news programs, and I was a junkie for all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it works better for me if I stay away from that stuff.
Well, and guarding your thoughts can go in a few different directions. You obviously you want to take in as good of quality information as you can. You want to make sure you're not just consuming bad information. Sometimes just sitting there, when you're alone and scrolling through information can be challenging. So you want to make sure you're looking out for good information, putting down your phone pretty regularly and taking a break from consuming things like that. You're the gatekeeper of what's going to come into your head, and guarding those thoughts that you have, it is an important part of creating a healthy mental thought process, because if you are going to be what you consume. It's like feeding your body junk food or good food. So that will kind of reinforce bad thoughts if you've got them. And also part of guarding your thoughts is guarding yourself from people. Sometimes there are some people in our lives that they don't bring us up, they bring us down. They don't fill us up, they take away. And this is an okay time to say, maybe this is not where I want to be putting my energy, because it's not helping me.
Yep.
Yeah, weed the garden, so to
Yep.
speak. Exactly. Yeah. And that's okay. It's okay to do that, because what you're talking about is what everyone calls self-care. You have to do some of that in order to maintain healthy friendships. My friend said this just the best way, and she said that the conversations and the people that you talk to now, you're planting seeds. What do you want your garden to look like? Do you want to put your effort and your watering into the seeds that are going to flourish into something really productive and beautiful? Or do you want to put the energy into people and things that are just going to be weeds and just going to take away from you? And so it's a good time, now that we've got it, to sort of reflect on who's around you and what you're exposing yourself to.
I know that when you go through grief, one of the most common things that I have heard from people is once they fully realize that, and then they're kind of walking out in the general population and they see other people going on with their day just like nothing had ever happened, and your world is kind of closed down around you, and that does lead to that ability to, or that desire almost to withdraw, because you get the feeling nobody else understands me. Nobody else gets what I'm going through. Nobody else has been through that.
My absolute favorite person who described this was Billy Crystal. He did a one-man show called 700 Sundays, and it was all about the 700 Sundays that he got to spend with his dad before his dad died. And he called it the otherness. It's just the most perfect way to describe that, because you see life happening around you. You see that there's a pandemic, you see all these things, and there is even a part of your brain that thinks, I should probably care more about this. Like, this should affect me more, but it doesn't really, because I am so apart from this, because I am pushing this boulder of grief up a hill. And other things, when you're pushing a boulder, you got one thing to think about. You're not thinking about everything else that's going on around you. So you just feel apart from everything. And part of a grief journey, anyone's grief journey, is to figure out how to make that boulder just a little bit lighter over time.
Yeah. Or to maybe get some help pushing that boulder up, because there are other people and other things. I know that both Mandy and I know the story of a lot of the people who are on the call with us, and some through tragic circumstances, the death, unexpected, some expected after an illness or old age, but nonetheless, it's never welcome. Mm-hmm. And then some of our folks that are on the call with us have been with us to grief share and things like that. And so when you get help pushing that boulder up the hill, it first of all, it reinforces that you're not alone. It gives you some comfort in knowing that other people have been here too, and they're able to make it, and maybe they can help me make it. So let's kind of turn towards things that can help us, some things that help us cope a little bit more. And one of the things that we talked about last week, and we've been talking about somewhat, and I've been really doing this, and I think you have too, is writing letters. Both you and I are doing something a little differently. I try and write 5 of these a week where I'm sending out just thank yous. My wife is calling people. She's calling people that she hasn't heard from in a long, long time and having great conversations. I tend to write just a quick note that says, I really, really value our friendship. Looking forward to the next time that we can get together. And that, I mailed 5 of those this morning. Makes me feel great. It really does.
Yeah, I've been writing to my sister. I can call my sister. I can text my sister. I can reach her on Facebook, Instagram, any way you want to reach her. I could.
Texting.
But it's there's really something great about writing a letter and corresponding via mail. There's you feel a little bit connected to people, but it's also an act of creativity, because you are by yourself when you write it. And sometimes we write things that are a little bit more meaningful when we're writing it with our own hand.
And so we give it some thought. We give it some thought to do.
Well, and there's a creativity piece to it where you get to pick your paper, you get to pick your envelope, your stamp. Are you going to doodle on it? Like, what do you want to do? Well, what do you want this to be? And then I find at the end of the letters, I'm always ending it with something gratitude oriented, just I'm so thankful for you. Or, if you're writing it to someone who's been supportive to you, you can say, thank you so much. Your support has meant so much to me. You can, even if you want to, write the letter to the person that you lost. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're going to mail. There are ways to do this and get feelings and thoughts out onto paper. And if you are going to mail it out, you get a little endorphin rush when you finish it all, put the stamp on it, lick the envelope, and drop it into the mailbox. And you think, there's a good feeling about that.
It does kind of open up a little gratitude gene in you, because I find that I'm signing all of my letters, not sincerely, I'm signing them gratefully. And I am. Those of you that have been through the Grief Compass program and have seen some of our content, you know that we're very big on journaling. And journaling can be very, very simple thing. It really doesn't have to be. It always sounds like it's more daunting than it is. I have to get the right notebook. I have to get the right pen. I have to have the right time of day, the right chair, the light just hitting me. You don't need any of that.
Yeah.
I always tell people that I think one of the best things you can do, especially when you're pushing that boulder up the hill, is to, before you go to bed, just keep a card or a piece of paper by your bedstand, and then write 3 things on there that you're grateful for. It doesn't matter how big they are. In fact, sometimes the smaller, the better. Just be grateful. There's always 3, even on a dark day, there's always 3 things to be grateful for. And go to bed with that being your last thing that you do before you go to bed. There's a little priming of the subconscious that goes on with that. And then when you get up in the morning, the first thing you look at is just look at your list. And it just plugs you in towards a positive thought. And for a lot of people, if they keep the same sheet and they write the next 3 down below this and the next 3 down below that, and sometimes they could be repeated, it doesn't matter. It's just to find something that you are grateful for, because gratitude does release a whole different kind of endorphin than anger does. And I think it leads to a more restful mind when it's time to go to sleep too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's other ways to get that sort of that feeling, the feel good endorphins in your head. There's ton of research that supports gratitude practice in helping to create a positive outlook. And another thing that you can do is helping others. There's a bunch of research in this too, where if you can help somebody else, a lot of times you really do get more back than you give, because and it's hard right now given our
A lot of people
distance.
see that as an in-person thing.
Right. It doesn't have to be in person. We can still do that. We can still help other people without leaving our homes if it's not possible. There is an in-person need right now. If you're healthy, if you're able, like I know Second Harvest Heartland is delivering a great organization. They are delivering emergency meals because there's so many kids who relied on school for food that they are now getting, they're accepting volunteers to help do no contact deliveries. And then also giving blood. That is a huge thing right now because a bunch of blood drives had to get canceled. We all have that. So that's another thing that people can do. But there's a lot of things that we can do online to help other people or help society in general. One of my favorite things is that the Library of Congress has a bunch of historical documents that were obviously handwritten, and they want to get them all transcribed. So they're inviting anybody. You don't have to be an expert in anything. You can just go in and transcribe historical documents, and then they'll get reviewed again, and it's not all on you. But it's really a cool thing.
Congress in Washington D.C. and you're able to participate in this.
Yep. Anybody is. We'll put I'll put links in the follow-up email that we send after this. But yeah, there's really great things that you can do still. And if you go to volunteermatch.org, they have a special section that's just for online services that you can provide to people from the safety of your home. And that's part and parcel to the overarching just reality that helping other people is a way to help you. It's a way to validate you. It's a way to help you feel productive, because a lot of what's been taken away from us in this situation with the pandemic is that we don't feel productive. And like even the busy things, like if you're experiencing the loss of someone that you love, there's a feeling sometimes that you can at least do this. You have your work, you have this, I can do this. And it keeps you kind of going. And when those things go away, you might have to refill your coffers of things that you can do that make you feel good and make you feel productive.
There's a lot of worth and good feelings associated with being productive. And and being helpful to other people. So, you know, we've kind of looked at helpfulness and volunteering as something that you have to do in person. It's a thing that you have to leave your house. But there are so many things right now that people are getting very, very creative with. Mandy's mom knows down in New Ulm, she knows that we're all having troubles getting personal protective equipment. And she went out and got the right kind of fabric. I don't know if she went out or got it delivered to her or had it in storage or something like that, but she made masks for all of us funeral directors, which we really, really appreciate. It was a small
awesome.
thing on her part, but when we got this, I thought this is really stunning because somebody really is thinking about somebody else, and I really appreciated that. So
And
it made
another way
me
to
feel good.
incorporate that into your grief experience, sorry to interrupt you, but
Right.
is if there was a cause that your lost loved one was really passionate about, you can get involved in that cause too. You can make contributions. You don't have to devote your entire life to that, but you can make small contributions to something that they were really passionate about, and it helps with that process of which we often talk about in Grief Compass, about meaning making. It helps to make meaning out of the pain that you're going through and the loss that you've experienced.
So, you know, for all the people that are on the call, please remember, regardless of where you are in the cycle of Grief Compass, of receiving the content from Grief Compass, you can always go to griefcompass.com, and all of our content is right there. So you can go to that, and you can even search for certain keywords if you wish. But there's a lot of resources there. And then in not too long, we're going to tell you about a tool that you already have access to. You might not have needed it. You might not have remembered it, but we're going to remind you about that too before we're done tonight. So stick around. We'll give you that. We'll give you that tool that you will have access to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if we're doing something for somebody else, let's do something for ourselves. And one of the things that I know changes my mood and changes my honestly helps me sleep is some physical activity, some exercise. Now, my wife never misses 45 minutes on the treadmill or a little walk around the lake. And I notice she goes to sleep a lot easier than I do, or stays asleep a lot better than I do. But the times that I'm out there doing something physical, again, I feel like I've been productive, and I go to bed physically tired instead of emotionally tired.
Yeah, we always talk about the physical and mental. It's one of the first things we talk about in Grief Compass are the physical and mental benefits of getting some movement. I mean, I almost think that the term exercise seems like it has too much pressure on it.
It
Like
does.
it's just some movement, just getting your body moving in walking, hiking, stretching. I mean, you don't have to go to the gym. And the nice thing is there's no pressure to go to the gym right now because gyms are closed. So all you have to do is just
And nobody else has to see you. That's what I like.
yeah, exactly. You can do this in the privacy of your home. And there are so many programs right now that are trying to make it easier for all of us to exercise while we're at home. So and I'll put links up to this too, but there's Center, Beachbody, the YMCA does a bunch of free classes that you can go and access online and do them in the privacy of your home. If you don't want to do that, just do some feel good stretches for 10 minutes 3 times a day. Yeah, exactly. Just get a good stretch in. But just because I know that when you're experiencing grief, sometimes the hardest thing in the world to do is just even get out of bed.
Yeah.
Like
Everything is an effort.
it can be crushing. And so if you can just do something small for 10 minutes, just look at your clock and say, okay, in 3 minutes from right now, I'm going to get up, and for 10 minutes, I'm just going to stretch a little bit. I'm going to do some neck rolls, just simple things. Maybe fire up a Tai Chi video that just gets you some movement, and then you can be done with it. But just that little sense of accomplishment added with the benefits of movement and getting your blood flowing are fantastic for your mental well-being and for feeling you did a little bit of something.
And incidentally, all these resources are available for free, because all you have to do is go into Google or go into YouTube and just do a search for this kind of stuff. And all of this stuff is free. It's amazing the amount of content that's available out there that doesn't cost you a thing. So Taelor, it's one thing to talk about exercise. It's another thing we got to kind of go in the other route, which is diet, and talk about that, because I know that I'm working on my quarantine 15. You know, when you go home and you've got your starches to eat there, and you've got plenty of food, because a lot of times the way that we comfort ourselves is to get some food. This is probably the right time to kind of keep an eye on that as well.
It's worth keeping an eye on. You know what?
A guilty pleasure is still.
I'm going to be honest with you. Like, you have to pick your things. At the end of the day, with the stress that comes with this, with the anxiety that comes with it, with the stress and anxiety that come with grief as well, everybody's going to have their vice, and they're going to have the things that they work on and do well. And then they're going to have things that they're just going to give themselves permission to not do that well. Honestly, the thing that I give myself permission for, and this is just me, is with snacks. Like, at this point, I'm like, I just need to have a vice here. I can't, like, you're trying so hard to do stuff. So what I'm saying with this is that it's okay to not do all of this stuff perfectly. Yes, of course. You want to eat. We all know how to eat right, don't we? We all know the rules of it. It's like less sugar, reducing caffeine if you can. That'll help you sleep better at night. Getting good, healthy, lean proteins, eating vegetables when you can. All of that is such great advice. But with our lesser ability to go out right now and go to the grocery store, and feeling a little anxious about even going to a grocery store right now, I'm just that's the one I'm saying, all right, well, we'll do our best.
I feel less anxious about going to a Dairy Queen, quite honestly. I've able to overcome that. But you're right. It's as in all things, some moderation in all of this, and just being aware of it. And then
and just being forgiving of yourself. You know, if you eat 3 Oreos tonight, don't let that be the thing that ruins your night. I mean, there are certain things that you just, there's a nice message about self-forgiveness, and the word that they use in mindfulness is equanimity, like looking on things without judgment. And that is, I always try to do that as much as I can with myself, which is never easy. But the more we can lean towards that, the more okay with what's going on we become.
We do not push perfection around here. And that's not what we're striving for. We're just striving for movement in the right direction, that help pushing the boulder up. When I talk about grief, I talk about it in terms of a tide coming in. The tide never comes in all at one time. It comes in a little bit and then it recedes. And then it comes in a little bit further and then it recedes. And those are the kind of days that we have associated with grief. Those are certainly the days that we're having associated with isolation. And you compound those two, and it really adds to that. So perfection should never be our goal, because we're never going to hit it. And
the secret is that perfection is an illusion. It's not even a thing.
Wow.
No one's perfect. What? And there's no way to grieve perfectly. Yeah, no.
Yeah, but nobody ever told you.
No.
Because there's never been a class. Your parents never prepared you for major loss. And
you don't know it till you go through it.
You don't know it until you go through it. And if it was tough enough that you went through it like you did at an early age, a lot of times at an early age, just like if you're an adult, you're kind of left there to kind of go through it, to tough it out, which is why we're so proud of Grief Compass, because it is it is a great compilation of information that's useful to people as they're going through what they're going through.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, I got to turn off my little timer here. Let's talk about meditation and prayer too, because for a lot of people, just taking a still moment, and this gratitude thing at the end of the day can kind of fall into almost prayer and meditation. But meditation, where you just kind of call on yourself to calm and still the mind, and just give yourself some time to just kind of clear away things, oddly gives you more of a sense of control rather than a sense of emptiness, of no thoughts. I'm a big believer in meditation, and I certainly am in prayer too. As a Catholics, we Catholics kind of recite our prayers. But I think that when you pray and you have a conversation, it's very much like meditation. And you have a tendency to realize that, hey, I don't have to be in control of everything. And I can just ask for the grace to be able to handle the things that I'm dealing with right now, not 10 feet from now or 2 months from now, just handle what's going on right now.
Well, prayer and meditation are part and parcel of the same thing. It's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's focusing your thoughts a lot of times on things that you aspire towards, things that are weighing on your mind, and things that you're grateful for. Those are the same practices, whether you're meditating or you're talking about the recited prayers of Catholicism, and there's mantras and other
Very
thoughts,
much.
beliefs, and religions. It's all kind of just about focusing in on what's in front of you and thinking quietly without judgment about what's going on in your life, without as much judgment as is possible. And there are so many resources out there for meditation. One of my favorites is Calm. I use Calm every day, and they have.
Wait a minute, you got to tell everybody that Calm is an app.
Oh yeah.
That you pretty much get for your phone. It's not very expensive. It's is it a monthly charge? Or is it a one-time charge?
There's a 7-day free trial of it if you want to just try it, and then you can figure out what it is. But it has it's an app that you use in your phone, and it has guided meditations in it. My favorite part of it is that they have people who are professional actors who read stories that you fall asleep to in a very calming kind of ASMR kind of way. And one of the great big apps out there is Headspace, and their whole focus is helping people to meditate. And the really thing that I think is so interesting when you think about grief and meditation is that they show with MRI imaging that you actually can start to rewire your brain and your thought processes when you start to meditate. It is fascinating how you can change your wiring, your brain chemistry, and outlook by just narrowing your focus and looking at the way you can handle things in front of you.
These links are going to be in the email that we're going to send you, but I personally vouch for Headspace. It's one word, Headspace. And I think right now they're providing it for free, at least during this predominantly the isolation period here. But Headspace is really a neat way to just take 10 minutes and sit down and use a little technology to kind of, oddly, it's paradoxical, use a little technology to kind of detach from it.
Use technology to unplug, right?
Yeah, right. I knew there was a better way
it actually works. It does. There's other ways to do this, to kind of get that experience of flow and creativity. And that's something we're all familiar with, which is using art. One of the favorite things that we do as a group of employees at Mueller Memorial is we go to the White Bear Center for the Arts and we take an art class and we learn how to do something that we've never done before. And
the last time I took an art class was high school.
Right.
But it was a lot of fun.
It's phenomenal to just get in there, because one of the things that's so freeing about art is that you don't have to be an artist. You do not have to be an artist to do it. You just got to pick up some materials and go. And there are so many ways that you can incorporate art into your life. It's painting or writing, drawing, cooking, baking. There's all kinds of art that's out there. Gardening is a
Yeah, you
piece
can
of art,
find
is a work of art.
a lot of artistry in gardening or in cooking. And honestly, when we went to the Center for the Arts and did our thing, there were probably 8, 9 of us there. We just had a great time, and it was surprising how artistic some people really were, who really don't have that artistry normally, but you just kind of you activate a part of your brain that just doesn't get, and the older you get, the less active it becomes.
And the
And
power of art is in the doing. That's the thing. It's not about finishing a big project. You don't even have to finish whatever you're working on. It's about the engagement and the possibilities of the decisions that you're making as you are creating. So whether you pick up this colored pencil or this color paint, or if you make an impression here on this thing that you're sculpting, there's all these decisions that you're making, and your senses are involved with it. And decision and opportunity is really just another word for hope, because what you're doing is you're looking at possibilities. And when you look at the possibilities of the materials that are in front of you, your brain recognizes this as hope. And that is something that is a lot of times so hard to find when we're going through grief,
hope is
because
another set of hands pushing that boulder up the hill. Plus,
hope is one of the biggest set of hands on
hope
pushing that
also
thing up.
gives you hope also gives you the feeling that, hey, I'm starting to regain some control here. I'm starting to have this. So I told you all earlier that we were going to give you a tool that you already had available to you. And again, this is going out in the email to you. But every person that has been served by our funeral home and gets Grief Compass materials has access to a little used, but right now I think could be tremendously helpful tool, and that is the toll-free hotline, that 800 number that's answered 7 days a week, 24 hours a day by master's level and above therapists, grief counselors who have a specialty in grief counseling. You can call them one time, you can call them many times. There is no cost to it. And for a lot of us guys who look at, calling a professional as kind of a real
A failure.
failure.
A lot of men feel like it's a failure if they can't do something
that
themselves.
you can do this and you can remain anonymous and you can have that conversation. And in fact, when I talk to these people, they find that a lot of their calls come in the middle of the night, because people will sit there in bed and kind of toss and turn. And then finally, after a while, they'll finally realize, okay, maybe I'm just going to give this number a call. So all of you have this available to you. It's on each one of the emails that you receive from us. It will be on the email that you get tomorrow as well. And then I also want to tell you that I've encouraged you to go to the blog content at griefcompass.com, because all of our information is there as well. And it's a tremendous source of help for you.
Yeah, and there's on the grief support line, a lot of people think that if I have to call a grief support line, it's like I'm calling a crisis line, and I have to be in crisis before I can justify calling. And that's not the case.
No.
If you are in a situation where you just need someone to talk to for a little while, or maybe your regular support system, or maybe the person you're living with right now or you're quarantining with has articulated or otherwise implied that they've reached their limit talking about your bereavement, you have someone else you can talk to. This is just someone you can talk to. If you just want to talk about the person you love that's not with you, you can do that. You don't have to go there with a plan. They will help you through it. You just talk about whatever you want to for 5 minutes or an hour or however long you want to. It's okay. And at the beginning of this, we were talking about how, unprecedented times. Everybody's saying unprecedented times. Well, maybe we do something that's unprecedented. Maybe you do something that you normally wouldn't do
Scandal.
because it's available, and let's take unprecedented action and unprecedented times. So, and again, it is completely free. It's included in the services that we provide at Mueller Memorial and Grief Compass. So you can just go ahead and use it, and I'll include it in the email that's coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm very proud of the content that's there, and we pay the membership so that you don't have to, and you don't even have to weigh that as a decision. So you can always call them. They're tremendously valuable. So we wanted to leave a little bit of time, and we do have a little bit of time for questions and answers. So if you have a question that we can help you with, or if you have a topic that you'd like us to go into more depth on, we'd love to know what we can do to help you. And we think that maybe this is just the start of some of these, especially during these times that we're really kind of in our own cocoons for a little bit. So Mandy is going to kind of moderate our questions, and I'm just looking at, I do see one here that says, Taelor, what if we want to see some of the, if we want to get the emails again for Grief Compass, is there a way to get the emails again?
You bet.
They've cycled through.
Yep. If you've gone through it already, I have your email. If you're on here, I will email you that, or I'll sign you back up for it. There's not an automated way to do that, but I can do it. I can force that through. No problem.
There is a way though to get the first 8 weeks, if you like, for free. So the first
anyone can get that. Yeah.
Yep, the first 8 weeks is really the intense time. And we're talking about the acute loss period, which is that period before your brain fully realizes the loss and the onset of grief. And that's really important to understand. And sometimes that's good to get a little primer on that after the fact too, because then you can say, oh yes, I felt that, I understood that. And you can do that right now. You can get that tonight if you want. And it's at trial.griefcompass.com. It's trial.griefcompass.com. And we've made that during this time of isolation, we've made that free to everybody. So if anybody wants to get it, if you want to pass that email or that URL on to anybody else in your family or in your acquaintance, please feel free to do so. So we want to give you the most resources that we possibly can. And we have another, any books or movies to read or watch while being stuck at home? Well, okay, and I got one too, because Mandy and I were talking here during dinner that we were talking about, they had just seen the movie, I think it's a Pixar movie, Inside Out. And Inside Out really goes through, really has a unique way of looking at emotions that is not really, it's entertaining for a kid, but it's enlightening for an adult. And so I really recommend it. That movie is great. It's light, it's easy to consume, and you'll find yourself nodding your head a lot.
Yeah, and not to lean too heavily on the fine folks at Pixar, but they're so good.
Yeah.
But the movie Coco, C-O-C-O,
Yeah.
is, oh man, it's about Dia de los Muertos and like the legacy and the love you have for people who've passed on before you. It is, I mean, you're gonna cry, but it's so good. And there is actually on Grief Compass, we did a post about 50 great movies to watch that are about grief. So there's ones that are good for crying, good for not crying, and just the feel goods. There's a whole spectrum of those. And then a couple of books that I love. One of like a more of a self-help actual like an experiential book that was by Sheryl Sandberg called Plan B.
Plan B. Yep.
And it is a fantastic book, and it just talks about after the death of her husband, how she had a whole plan A, and now it's like, okay, now I got to go to plan B, which is really, I mean, a key to what we experience after grief is needing to completely pivot our entire lives. And then one that is just like a diary of experience of grief written by someone who is such a good writer is A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis. He is a person of faith. So
Good Christian soul.
Yep. Yeah, there's a Christian theme to it, but even if you aren't somebody who's very, very religious, just the beauty with which he talks about and his wife and his ability to articulate grief is so amazing, because sometimes you just choke on words and you can't find the words to justify or to explain the way you're feeling. And he has so many words in his brain that he can just put together, and you're like, oh yes, that's exactly how that felt.
And it's a short read too.
It's really a tiny book, and it's so great.
I do want to tell you, as we're coming up on the hour, and this has gone by very, very quickly, I do want to tell you that we have a deep, deep heart for what you're going through, because we've all gone through it too, and we continue to go through it. My mom and dad, who started this business, had a love for the families that we serve. And one of our basic values that is in both of our lunchrooms, it's not really visible to the general public who comes into our buildings, and there is no general public that's coming into our buildings right now, but one of the basic values that we value the most is we love and respect the people we serve, and we truly do. And so if there's anything that we can do for you, or any other topics that you'd like us to do, or any suggestions you might have, reach out to me at scott@muellermemorial.com, or you'll get an email from Taelor tomorrow. And Mandy, unmute your microphone so you can at least say hi to everybody, would you please?
Hello, good evening.
There you are. There you are, because Mandy knows a bunch of the people that are on the call too. So we are at 7:28, and we promised that we'd be done in an hour. Any final thoughts, Taelor?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming out, and please do let us know if there's anything else that you want to hear about, any other questions that you have, or things you'd want us to dig into, because we would be very happy to do that for you. Absolutely. Thank you for coming out.
I see one more question from Rosalind that says, do you have any resources that you would recommend for understanding the financial things that may come up? I do, Rosalind, and because that's a very broad question, please send me an email that puts a sharper point to that question, and I can direct you to some resources. So again, it's scott@muellermemorial.com. I'll be happy to refer you to a couple books that would, or even online resources that you can get very quickly. So with that, I want to thank Mandy. I want to thank Taelor. It's always a pleasure working with you. Pleasure to work with you, Mandy, in the other room too. But until this social distancing is over, we love you, and we wish only the best for you. So thank you very much for being part of the evening.
Thank you.